Does your wife need more hats?
What's that?
Does your wife need more hats?
Hot desk?
Yeah, find out.
Okay, yeah, well.
I think my buddy's looking to get rid of some more hats.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I tell people about that all the
Do
time.
you?
Give them like a fucking tape, and they have down school books. No, I don't
Yeah.
know about for him.
And he moved down. He lives in Noblesville now. He used to
Oh,
live in
really?
Wabash, so
That's even
it'll be
better.
easier to
Okay,
get him.
I'll let her know when I get.
Yeah, find out.
Great.
She is a staple. All right, you guys ready?
We're ready.
All right, it's 5:30. I'll go ahead and call to order the school board work session. On the agenda tonight, we have a presentation from Baker Tilly on the impact on the proposed GO bond issuance we'll be discussing later. So Velvia?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good to see you again. Yeah. There you go. Hi, good evening. Good to see you again. I'm Belvia Gray with Baker Tilly. I serve as the school corporation's municipal advisor. Tonight, I'm here to share information on a proposed general obligation borrowing. So I'm gonna, who's in charge of the clicks? Oh, you're in charge. Okay, great. Yeah, we can go to the second slide. Okay, everyone has a paper copy. So when we put together financing options, I know I've shared this with the board before, those of you who have been around. We like to look at what does your existing debt service picture look like? Then we look at what is the proposed borrowing, and then how does that fit in with the school's overall debt picture. This is your detail of existing annual debt service. The school has bonds that will be fully repaid after 2042. You have one bond issuance, your 2017 general obligation bonds, that will be fully repaid after this year. And on the next slide, that shows all of the payments in a graphical, though for those of us who are visual learners, it shows all this information in a graph form. One thing I wanted to point out is in 2025, there was an increase in the total overall payments for the school corporation. However, the school did manage its overall tax rate to 0.3999, so under the 40-cent threshold. And the original plan was that it was going to reduce its tax rate to the 0.3999 and need to use some operating balance in order to accomplish that. But we got information from Ms. Cleaver about where your actual ending balances were at the end of December. And the school actually received a little bit more money in its debt service fund. So actually, there was no operating balance spent down. So I just wanted to share that with the board because I know that was something that was discussed. But because there was additional revenue received, and I can go into the reasons for that if you want me to, but basically there's levies that are certified, but sometimes there's variety in terms of how much individuals are actually paying in their taxes that then ultimately gets distributed to the school corporation. All right, next slide then is the school corporation's current general obligation borrowing capacity. As a reminder, this is the calculation that tells us how much in debt the school corporation can carry in its own name. And the calculation's made every year. It's based upon your most recent net assessed valuation, divided by 3, multiplied by 2. Those are in our state constitution and statute. And then that gets to your debt limit. From that, we deduct any outstanding principal payments. So currently, the school corporation's debt limit is a little over $4.45 million. So then if you go to the next slide, when we looked at a proposed borrowing and having conversations with Dr. Glaze and with Brooke, we know that the list of projects that you have, that our plan is to not exceed a $4 million borrowing, or that's the intent, assuming all the bids and everything comes in as you hope them to. Through this process, if the school board does move forward with a borrowing to provide flexibility for the district, we have included, there are certain maximum legal parameters that will govern, basically you can go up to those maximums, but you can't exceed them. So for the legal documents that will be up for your consideration in your regular board meeting, we've included a maximum borrowing amount not to exceed your general obligation borrowing limit of $4.45 million. So it just provides flexibility if something were to come in. Yes,
Are you talking about this document? Cause it says,
probably, I think from,
it says 5 million.
I think it also includes interest earnings, right? Yeah, it includes a couple of, that's for the appropriation, right?
We shall
Yeah.
appropriate a sum not to exceed $5 million out of the proceeds of the 2025 general obligation bond.
Yeah, so I'll let bond counsel, like, because it's more of a legal question, but generally, the reason that the appropriation is higher than the borrowing amount is because we account for, to the extent any interest earnings would be received, so that those can be appropriated for. So I'll let bond counsel explain, but the borrowing amount would not exceed your general obligation borrowing capacity of the 4.45 million. So that's what would be bonded. But what we are sharing based upon our conversations is that the true borrowing amount is likely not going to exceed that $4 million amount, just based upon the estimates that you have today. We've also included in our calculations, again, for maximums, a maximum interest rate. So what's included in the legal documents is 5.5%. We calculated our estimates based upon a 5% interest rate, and actually based upon where rates are today with a 10-year repayment term, the interest rate would be about 3.5%. So again, we build in a lot of flexibility, especially we know the legislature is in session right now. There certainly is the potential for things to change. We feel like what we've included here provides enough flexibility for the school corporation, regardless of the outcome of the actions of the General Assembly. When we put this together, one of the requests from the board last time that I came was making sure that we structure this debt so that it doesn't exceed your total overall debt service tax rate. And so that's what we've been able to accomplish here. Honestly, we could even accomplish it even if you went up to the 4.45 million. But the reason we wanted to show the 4 million here is because just based on conversations, it seems like that's more likely where the borrowing is going to be. So we wanted to be a little bit more realistic. The next slide then shows that information coming together in graph format. The dark blue represents your existing debt service payments, and kind of that teal sagey green color is the proposed repayment on the bonds. We did include a maximum repayment of up to 12 years, so it'd be 2 extra years. But again, based upon what we're seeing currently, we're assuming it will be a 10-year repayment. And we base that on no change in assessed valuation, so that's how we've calculated the payments here.
10 years at the 3%.
So what's shown on this graph here is 10 years at 5%. Okay. What as of today, like where rates are today, if we issued the debt, we sold the bonds today, the rate would be closer to 3.5%. So that would reduce your overall interest expense on the borrowing. The last page then has a summary of our different assumptions that have been used. We would assume, again, if the board moves forward with a proposed project, that at least as of right now, we'd be looking at a bond sale likely in September with closing at the end of the month. But that's always subject to change. What questions do you have for me?
Can you go back to slide 2? The chart of all the, or close it, either way. My question would be the 2022 A, B, and C and the 2023 A and B. It looks like after 2028, the amount we pay basically doubles. Why are we making smaller payments now and able to be, like, are we paying interest only?
Yes, those were, we talked about this at our last board meeting, but yes, those are the interest-only payments, and then as other debt is falling off, then we increase to include the principal payment.
Are we doing that with this debt
No,
No principal's gonna be paid at all?
on these from 2017, we've paid no,
on the 2022, on a couple of
22,
the-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 22 and the 23. And that, Tammy, that was, at the time that those bonds were issued, the decision was we want to keep your payment levels where they were. There was a tax rate management strategy, so the decision was made to do interest-only payments until some debt payments were falling off, and then bring up the principal, as that other debt was being retired.
But as those are being retired, we're taking on new debt.
Yes, I'm presenting on a proposed debt issuance tonight, yes.
I'm sorry, I asked some questions I've asked before because we have new
No,
board
that's,
members.
yeah,
So
no, that's totally fine.
it's not that I
Totally
forgot what you said.
fine. No, that's okay. No, I appreciate it.
And then, so based on this, the next page, sorry, after this, the max we could borrow is, 4.451 million. And I'm sorry, I need another explanation on why it says 5 million. Who could answer that? You said someone else?
So Jeff Quackenbush is the
Mhm.
school's bond counsel. He'll
Mhm.
be here for this meeting at 6:30. So I could answer it, but I don't want to get out ahead of him because he's the attorney who can answer the question from the legal perspective. But the 5 million is in one of your documents that is for the appropriation of bond proceeds. And so the reason it's higher, and this is common, this is how we do it for all debt issuance where there is an appropriation resolution that's involved. We appropriate higher than the borrowing amount because we estimate that there might be some interest earnings that are received. And so that is really, it's just to provide some cushion there so that you wouldn't have to come back and appropriate additional proceeds.
I guess I'm not understanding I'm sorry, I always have lots of questions, so I don't understand. Interest earnings to me would mean we need less money because we're earning interest.
But you won't know, well, it depends on if you have a decision made and all of that money, you make a decision on how quickly you're gonna spend the money. So if there's a quicker spend down of the dollars, then the interest earnings might be negligible. So it's in there to be conservative, I guess.
Could we
is the best way.
legally borrow $5 million then because
No.
it says $5 million in there?
No, you could not legally borrow $5 million.
But we could borrow 4.451.
Yes.
And if we only use, let's say, 3, then we're going to get interest earnings from that difference?
No, you'll only get the interest earnings based upon the amount of bonds that you issue. So the 5 million, it's like, every year the board approves, Brooke puts together the budget and there's an appropriation amount that you approve. So it gives you the authority to spend the money. So this is similar. This is an appropriation to be able to spend the bond dollars and any interest that happens to be earned after the bonds are sold and before you spend down the proceeds for the projects that you're issuing the debt for.
I guess I still don't understand. If we borrow the 4 million and we only spend 3 million, we've got 4 million sitting in the bank collecting interest from now until we start spending that 3 million.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you
we've
say
got-
that one more time?
4 million sitting in the checking account,
Mm-hmm.
waiting for the projects to be paid for.
Mhm.
So that 4 million is, we're earning interest on it.
In theory, yes. Yes. Depending on where it's invested, yes. If it is invested, yes, it would be earning interest.
Okay, and so. Not sure what I'm looking at.
Then there's $1 million sitting there.
Oh, well, we
There.
don't, you can't legally borrow more than you're expecting to spend, so we would if you knew, we would not issue the bonds until you knew exactly how much you needed to actually fulfill the projects.
But we've had projects with money left over. We then spent the balance of the money on other things.
Yes, because those projects were structured so that it was a cascading priority. So you had a huge list that exceeded what the bar, like,
So they were
I mean, it was
accounted
like-
for in the,
yeah, I mean, alternates, like all of that kind of stuff. When
Okay.
you have a scope where you're saying, and I guess this, in theory, this could also have some of that scope, but in general, we want the, certainly $1 million, we would not issue debt $1 million more than what you could actually show you could spend. And that's, I mean, that's federal tax law too.
Theory, could have interest, but we're not allowed to borrow that much. Or you can't, I mean, the federal government is not allowed to draw interest on loan money. You can to a certain amount. But, it used to not be an issue at all because interest rates were so low. But when they crept up and they've, been 4 or 5%, then we were able to draw so much off of that. But there's also a part of that, what's that called, arbitrage?
Arbitrage,
Arbitrage.
Yep.
Where they take a look at 7 years if you generated interest, and there's a formula the federal government uses, and then we would get it, if you exceeded that amount, we would get.
Pay taxes on it?
Yeah.
Basically, you can only earn interest up to the bond yield that is established at the time that the debt is issued. So anything over and that you receive over and above that bond yield, if certain exceptions aren't met, you have to rebate it back to the federal government. So that, and the history of that is they didn't want, people were issuing debt and then earning interest on it, and it was kind of a mess. So they very wisely made laws where you can't receive more in interest, the interest rate than you actually are getting on the bonds. And you also need to make sure that you're not borrowing in excess of what you reasonably expect you're going to spend for the designated projects.
okay, I'm gonna challenge you. You can go 2 slides ahead. And also, only Tammy and I have our microphones on, in case anyone's listening at home. Oh, you have yours on. Oh, you had yours. I meant up here.
Okay.
Okay, I know you've explained this to me before, but I've slept since then. We're gonna borrow 4 million, but 3.8 million is available. Where's the 200,000 hiding? Fees and
Not hiding.
it's spent.
Hiding. So that's the estimate that we've included for the cost of issuance. So that includes underwriter's discount, other professional fees to support getting you to the market. We always include numbers that are a little more conservative, again, because we're establishing your maximum parameters. One thing that we don't know today, again, if the board moves forward, is how exactly the bonds are going to sell. So that this includes like kind of the highest.
Closing costs if you're buying a house.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. Closing costs like if you're buying a home.
So another slide. You're doing better.
Forward or back?
Keep going forward.
Okay.
Keep going. Right there. Top one, excludes budget for fees.
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
No, that's within your debt service budget that Brooke budgets for every year. There are some fees that end up getting budgeted for your registrar and paying agent fees. And so when we put together it's like a minimal amount, but just, we wanted to disclose that in the actual detail of what we include here, it doesn't include those fees.
Okay. Just when I read something and I don't know what fees, Tammy and I don't like
No,
fees.
I understand.
So I have another question. Okay, so we're currently in debt at $55 million, and we're gonna add another 4 million to that. Is that correct?
So that's actually, that's a really good question. The 55 million is reflective of principal and interest payments. Lacey, did you have the breakdown, the principal payment? Do you have that, happen to have that? So the reason, so there is a component of that, obviously, that's like actually what you borrowed, and then the interest reflects the rest. And with the bonds that you have outstanding, they were issued all at various points in time with varying interest rates.
But the bottom line is, we're gonna be $59 million in debt.
Our total payments.
Your
will-
total
yeah.
payments, principal and interest.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a correct statement.
And then I guess I have one last question. I've been trying to figure out how we're able to do this, because we are at 39 cents and almost had to borrow money from ourselves, from our whatever fund, right? But we didn't. We were gonna take general obligation money. I'm not saying the right words, but we're gonna take
Operating balance.
Oh,
Operating balance
From your debt service.
to pay
fund
our, yeah,
To,
we were gonna lower our balance
Yes,
below
you were
what
gonna
we
lower your
really
debt.
have been doing. Okay.
yeah, yes, that's correct.
So I've been trying to figure out how are we able to take on more debt when we're already at the limit? Is it because the GEO bond from 2017 is coming off? Is that how
That
we're
is
able
certainly
to?
a piece of it, yes.
And
correct.
that's, so what
Operating
are
payment capacity.
the annual payments on this new money?
So the detail, hold on, let me get
See, I like
it.
to make them flip pages. Because you usually estimate, in your conservative approach to this, which I appreciate, you don't anticipate any increase in the AV.
Correct.
So you see my question, if the AV is the same, and we were at the 40 cents, and we take on more debt,
Mhm.
how do we squeeze that under the 40 cents? That's,
So actually, we're showing, so this year in 2025, your total payments are at around $4 million. And we're actually showing in 2026, the payments will actually go to, the payment for the first year of the proposed debt is $350,000. So that would take your total payments to about $3.7 million.
so the new debt's annual payment will be less than the debt of the payment coming off the books.
Yes, that's correct. Because so there's $639,000 in payments coming off
Yeah.
from that 2017. And so one way we could have done is said, well, we'll just take the payments back up to 4 million. But that's not what we did, because we know that we're trying to keep that tax rate at the level that the school board wants to keep it at. And so assuming zero change in assessed value, that's where the payments would come in.
Okay, and you said the first year would be 350,000. Is it gonna be different other years?
Well,
Because we're not.
yes, because there's other debt that's coming off. So for the first couple of years, first 3 years, it's at about 350,000. But principal is being repaid in those years. And then what we're showing from like 2029 to 2035, I mean, you can see on this bar here, like the bars in the first 3 years are a little bit smaller, and then they get a little bit bigger. And we also created, we wanted to make sure we had some step downs included in there so that the school could come back and contemplate similar projects and try to keep those payments at around the same level.
So I'm sorry, you didn't say this exactly, but I think this is what you meant. The first couple of years, the payment's 350,000, which
Yes.
counts principal and some interest, or interest and some principal.
Yes.
And then those payments will go up to
Correct.
drop.
Yes, yep, and they'll be in the $600,000 level. About, let's see, ranging, probably about 615 or so thousand on average.
So that we
And
can pay
remember,
it
that's
off in
based
the,
on the 5% interest rate too.
right.
Mhm.
So is that dollar amount set, or if the interest rate is lower, then those dollar amounts will be lower because we
Correct.
paid over 10 years? Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
exactly.
I know those are estimates. I'm not at 615, 614. I don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah.
I just, I'm just trying to figure out how we're doing this, because the 40 cents isn't just our goal anymore. Right? It's the state, and otherwise we have to go through
More process.
all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just making sure I understand how we get there. And Dr. Lays knows I don't want to capitalize any more interest.
We know all about that.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Capitalized interest here,
I believe you. I'm just,
zero capitalized interest.
How could you do that?
I'm done.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
And if those of you that are new understood all of that, you are 2 years ahead of me. Yeah, well, as they'll tell you down there, I'm not afraid to ask a question, the same one over and over, because you guys do money different than the rest of the world.
Yes, we do. You're exactly right. There's a no.
That's not a criticism, that's
No,
just a
it's just the way it
fact
is.
of life.
Yeah, it just is. Yeah, schools are different. That is for sure.
All right, thank you, Belia. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, the next part of our work session is to review the board agenda. Did anybody have any additions or subtractions to the published board agenda that you had in your packet?
I move we approve the agenda as distributed.
Very good. Dr. Glaze, if you would, so there's been a minor change in the advisory committees. Dr. Glaze has lined this up differently for this year, so he's gonna walk us through that.
As you might have noticed, I've tried to align our committees with our strategic plan priorities. So you might notice that you're maybe in a little bit of a different committee than what you once were. You can talk to me if there's, something you're just pining to be a part of. Please, just send me an email or something like that. But essentially what we're doing is our three priorities, which are professional learning experiences, communications, and then student achievement. They will become our committees. And there are still going to be some parts of the old system in here, but also some of the new parts as we're looking at our strategic plan and determining how we're moving through our strategic plan. So these committees are deep dives. So you think that, Scott Jaworski can talk about data in this meeting, go to a committee meeting and he will bedazzle you with data. So just more of a deep dive, more of an opportunity to ask a lot of questions, provide a lot of information to you about, how we're trying to move forward. So again, these are really just an opportunity to learn more about upcoming meetings and upcoming events and what we're trying to do with our strategic plan. Any questions on that at all?
Was that in an email?
It was in an
It-
attachment.
It's in your packet.
It's an attachment
Yeah.
in the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can give you this copy if you'd like.
For this particular session at 5:30.
No, it'll be in the 6:30.
It'll be I don't have a time on there, but typically we have them at 5:30, so that's my fault.
Yeah.
So
She was talking
typically,
about which agenda
It's
is
not
attached.
attached.
oh, I'm sorry, it's
not
attached to
in the 5:30 agenda.
no, it's the 6:30 agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah, I'm sorry.
okay,
Yeah. I should have done that.
got it.
And if you could make sure you invite Tammy to all of them,
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you do get the invite and
You just gotta
And I-
remember which one you're on. Or you show up.
And
in
I
the wrong
don't
one.
I don't really know why the system does that because I actually go through and select you, but then it sends it out to everybody. I
and
really
Tammy,
have
you're
no
not the
clue.
only one that showed up to a meeting.
So, and I didn't know that
Okay.
until just a few months ago. So, anyway, sorry about that.
All right, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
The last part of our public board working session is comments from the community relative to the bond issuance. So I don't know if we did have anybody sign up. Nobody sign up. So with that being said, we will adjourn the the work session, and we will reconvene at 6:30 for our normal board meeting. All right, well, good evening. Are we recording? We're good. Good evening. We're going to call to order the February school board meeting for Tipton Community Schools. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the vision statement. I've asked Jen to lead that this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For our vision statement,
Growing empowered, future-ready students who are prepared for a lifetime of opportunity and success.
All right, we've got a portion of our agenda now we call Tell Me Something Good. This is an opportunity for the board to tell us something they've noticed about the school and make comments on it. So at this time, I'd open up the floor to any board members that want to tell us something good.
I would love to kick us off. One of the things that I keep hearing around our community is how much they appreciate just so many more posts on our social media, just being able to follow our athletics, just things that are happening in our school, just people wanting to pay attention. And so, I mean, props to, I know Scott Jaworski contributes. I know teachers are sending in pictures and our administration works hard on that. And I just think it's a lot of fun to have our community members stay engaged with what we're doing here.
Very good.
I just wanted to say how sweet the middle school cheerleaders are. I attended my niece's basketball game last week, and I have a 5-year-old niece, and the middle school cheerleaders have taken her under their wing. And I don't know if they had a choice. She's a personality, but she has her own little outfit, and she does all the cheers with them, and it's just so sweet to see them kind of take her in, and they answer all her questions, and it's just so cute. But they're so sweet.
I know a project that our elementary reading specialist, Jessica Higginbotham, has been working on for a while to align with the strategic plan was the Family Fridays. The first one of those was this past Friday, and they had an underwhelming attendance, and it was really encouraging to see, I popped into that. So it was really encouraging to see Jessica, assistant principal, Sarah Wigington, Rochelle Carter, the social worker, and Alicia Arms from the Tipton County Family Resource Center, just kind of pivot, and they made that a plan of how can we fix this. It was very encouraging to see that they were very passionate about what they were trying to do with that event. And so how can we fix it for the next one? How can we get more attendance? How can we do better to where our message gets delivered to these families?
I had the opportunity yesterday to stop in for the Teachers Professional Development Day, and Scott Jaworski took me around to a couple of the different sessions, and so I was impressed to see how the teachers were working together and how they were motivated to be instead of to do, and it was just interesting to me since I've been out of school for such a long time. So thank you very much.
All right, I think at this time,
Yeah, if I could just, I'd like to make a motion with all of these wonderful people in our attendance that we move our Blue Future Awards next on our agenda, just to save them a little bit of time here.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to move Blue Futures up in the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now modified in our agenda.
All right. Well, I have the great honor of presenting, I might want to turn my mic. Thank you. All right. I have the great honor of presenting the first award tonight. And this first award is for Mr. Cliff Hawkins, who is our boys varsity basketball coach. And if you were not aware, last week he won his 100th game as a Blue Devil basketball coach. So good players. Well, congratulations, sir, and we appreciate what you've done. And how many sectional championships? Lots. And we've got the 1,000th game coming up here in a week or two, right? Yep. Crazy night. Work. There we go. Awesome. Great. Congratulations.
I'd just like to say one thing, just real quick. I've had the opportunity to coach Indiana high school basketball a long time. And I've been very fortunate. I've always been in good communities where people support the team, support our players, support the coaches, support the school corporation. But I want to tell you this, I've been in 3 schools where I've been able to win because of my players and my coaches that work with me. Over 100 games in 3 different schools. And I've never had anything like
Aw.
this. So I just wanted to know this is very, very special. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Aw,
Cliff.
thank you.
Our next, Blue Future Award will be for Cynthia Day. And we're honoring Cynthia because she spent 16 years on the Tipton County Library Board. And she has now decided to step down, and I'm sure she's going to be missed, but Cindy's a great individual and a hard worker and a proud graduate of our ambassador program.
Thank you. And I must say, the person who asked me to take on this leadership role was Mr. Schultz. And yes, and I think he knew my passion for reading and continuing that and research with my students and so forth. So I had an honor to follow in that footsteps. So
Thank you so much.
She's making her way up here. I'll wait to talk about her until she gets up here. I feel like these Blue Future Awards, we've given out several to the wrestling team over the last year or so, and we might just need to make it the wrestling award or something. So I wanted to take time to first recognize Emerson Atkins. For those that don't know, this was the first year that we had a girls wrestling state championship, and it was held down at the fairgrounds at the Corteva field house there. Emerson went through the tournament in sectionals. He won the Western tournament in the 170-pound class, advanced to regionals at Rochester, finished runner-up at the Rochester Regional, and then that gave her the opportunity then to go participate in state. So it's the inaugural event, and we were able to send a Blue Devil wrestler to the very first one, and she'll always be remembered for that. And the really cool thing is that she's only a sophomore, and with how hard Emerson works, I fully expect that the next 2 years are going to maybe even bring better results from even the state championship. So I wanted to recognize Emerson for her hard work and then for being the first girls wrestler to make it the girls state. Mr. Robertson, come on in.
Next contestant.
That's right. I think this is John Robertson. He teaches several classes at the high school for us, but English being kind of the big one, does the digital media class as well, and video game lit. But this Blue Future Award could have been probably given several months ago. We've got a chance to be in the Inferno, of all the updates and the things that we've done in that gym space. One of the big things that we did was add digital boards and a digital scoreboard. And then some other tech with sound equipment and all this other kind of stuff. We've added a bunch of tech in that space. And as John generally does, anytime we have that stuff, he takes on the task of figuring out how it works and then putting in the work to make quality stuff so we can use that stuff appropriately. So getting to use making the video production, which he's got a knack for anyway, and then making it look good, on the digital boards. He was preparing, the opposing team graphics and stuff, so that when we announce their, starting lineups, we're able to put up their things. All that stuff has to be made, especially for the first time around, before we have kind of a database of that kind of stuff. So he's put a lot of extra time in, just because he's passionate about it and he wants the school to look good when we have people in our building. So I want to thank John Robertson for his work towards the digital boards and all the production and extra stuff he does in Tiffin High School.
And I want to say full circle, Mrs. Day was my second and third grade teacher. It's a circle. Come on up.
I also wanted to highlight Mrs. Fernung. For the past couple of years, we have put on, it's now called the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council or Academy. And it was started with Mayor Schmicker when he was still at the Chamber of Commerce. And essentially, we asked kids to come in, get some leadership experience with Schaefer Leadership Academy out of Ball State. Mr. Ted Ward comes in, does some great training for our kids so that they get some real leadership experience. Looking at the schedule, again, this is another thing that's not like a stipended coach type thing. This is something that I reached out to Mrs. Fernung and was like, hey, are you interested in doing it? And she took off and just kind of made it her own. This year alone, she's been with students, and there's 22 meetings, on the schedule where these kids get together and get real experience. Back in, was that November, we had pitches.
Yeah,
Kids are coming up with ideas and plans for things that we can do around the school corporation that would benefit, Tipton students. I met with kids today that are talking about putting free hygiene products in some of our restrooms to make those more accessible. We talked about some school safety initiative things that one group was kind of looking at. So we started off with like 5 kids the first year of it, and now we're up to 14 or 15. I also want to point out that Tri-Central is invited to be a part of this. They've struggled to get people, and we still continue to get more and more Tipton kids to take advantage of this. So I wanted to thank Mrs. Fernung for taking this project on, getting a lot of kids interested, and a really great group of kids working towards it, making Tipton High School look good, and then making sure our kids get the best experience they can while they're with us. So thank you.
I just want to say, if you come down to the high school, one of our groups from the first year that we did this has created a calming room that students can go and can use, and it's been utilized a lot. So that's awesome. And then we're in the process right now of getting an emotional support dog certified for next year. So they're working on a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Okay. I borrowed that joke from Rob earlier, so thanks, Rob. Okay. Forget London Philharmonic. I once had a band director say that the scariest band concert of the year is the first 6th grade band concert that happens. Okay. Especially when they're just starting off that way. You never know what it's going to be like. I don't know if that's how Mr. Shaver has felt leading our band down at the middle school, but I am going to be honoring quite a few kids tonight for some stuff that happened. So first, I do want to start with the 3 staff members, and then I'll actually let Mr. Shaver kind of chat about the kids, and we'll kind of figure that out. Mr. Shaver is an incredible band director. It takes being in his classroom for approximately 5 seconds to see that amazing things are happening. He once told me that as a teacher, he sought to use every second of his class to the fullest capacity. And I believe it is because of that he does such amazing things. And so tonight, I want to honor not just him, but 2 individuals who help him as well. Mrs. Wallen, a recent, member of the Blue Devil family, and a less recent member of the, two people who I know contributed to the rest of the awards that I'm giving out, which are to the 6th and 7th grade and 8th grade students who recently went and participated in ISMA. Now, I'm not going to say much more about that because I think that Mr. Shaver will be able to speak more at length about that. But I really can't impress upon you guys enough. The things that Mr. Shaver does in his band classroom are truly magical, transformational. So thank you. There's yours. Okay, absolutely.
Oh, we can.
Oh, yeah. Here, well, let's get a picture of you and me first, and then we'll get Top and Lisa.
Well, let's
here.
never say band directors don't like to get pictures.
When Mr. Eric wrote to me last week about recognizing our students for their solo and ensemble accomplishments and asked if I could invite some of them to come to the meeting tonight, my first question was, could I also invite Ms. Wallen and Mr. Fletcher? Ms. Wallen comes over to the middle school every day, and frankly, our success wouldn't happen without her help. She does a fantastic job taking kids to in sectional practices or even just one-on-one as needed. And Mr. Fletcher, who you know was our band director at the high school for 16 years, one of my best friends, and he comes here to the school once a week voluntarily. He's been retired for a number of years, but he's busier now than he ever was, I think. And yet he still loves to come work with the kids. He gets no pay. We don't have a fund for that. Maybe a free meal once in a while. But I just want to say how much I appreciate both of them, their professionalism, their skills, and the impact that they have on our students. So I know Mr. Ayers just gave them each a certificate. Yeah, well deserved. Let's give them a round of applause.
You should have known I was gonna say that.
Now, we have a number of students who agreed to come here tonight because they're the ones we're actually honoring. A week ago Saturday, we had students perform in the annual ISMA Solo and Ensemble Festival at Kokomo High School. And I think we had 20 kids this year sign up. It's a voluntary project, but it meant extra rehearsals during and after school, learning extra music, and then they have to go perform in front of a judge. It's not a contest against others, it's only against yourself, but your final score determines whether you get a gold, silver, or bronze award. And this year, I think for the sixth or seventh year in a row, all of our students who participated earned gold awards. So I think that's a really great track record. So I'm going to invite, any of them are here. I know Zoe's way in the back. Come on up. Any of you, come on over here, please. We've got certificates for you too.
Yeah, we've got Carson Webster, who is here, Grayson Height, who is here, Zoe Moats, who is here for the 6th grade level. Here, one of those isn't you guys, so I'll let you guys. Okay, Zoe, there's yours. And then,
Riley Bales.
Yeah.
And
well, the other 6th graders that are not here are Mark Vasquez, so he'll get his, I assume, tomorrow in band class for Duncan. So there's the 6th grade, so I guess maybe a round of applause just for the 6th grade. And then Mr. Shaver was introducing our 7th and 8th grade.
Riley, representing 7th and 8th grade, we have Riley Bales and Eli Long.
So they would be. And as I go through, I'll get yours in a second, Riley. We also have Aria Schuler, who has represented, Jasper Neely, who is in here, Gunnar Moore, who was in here, Kinsey, is it Bogger? Bogger, okay, great, okay. Millie Porter, Cohen Haybrick, Will Wainscott, Tucker Soul, Cecilia Scheimer. They just keep coming and coming. There you go, Briley. There's yours. Okay, Briley Bales. There we go. Corbin Chambers. I promise I'll be done eventually. Carter Smith. And last but not least, Shane Mulvaney, who participated.
I'm just very proud of all of these kids, the extra work they put in, and how much progress they've made. They represent our community very well, so I really do love these guys. I'm glad they could show up here tonight to represent their classmates as well. Let's give them one last one. We can get a picture.
Get them all together. Get them all together.
How do we get this picture?
Bradley's like, I don't know where to go. You got here, Bradley. You're gonna have to come back here. You're tall.
Oh, boy.
Come back to the floor.
Can we also just point out that she's wearing her basketball uniform too, because she just came from playing a full game. Great turnout. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Right,
Okay,
well,
he didn't give me a chance to talk.
Top, you gotta,
First of all.
you gotta be on staff to speak, Top. Have a seat. You have to be on staff, yeah. You have to be on staff to speak. He said you were a volunteer, so that's,
Are you kidding? Or are you?
no, you may,
The reason we have such a wonderful school here, you honor two of the best high school people I've ever worked with before. And then probably the best band director I've ever worked with. My career goes back a long, long way into the military and before, is Mr. Shaver. He is a true he's a president that we got. And now we have another one. Lisa Vaughn. She's another good one. That's why I come back, because I learned still from them. And so that's why we have a good system, because we're willing to hire the people that are like these people. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
thanks, Tom. Well, congratulations to everybody on your Blue Future Awards, and if you are interested in consent agenda and Go Bond appropriations, you are more than welcome to stay. But at this time, if you'd like to leave and save yourself the insomnia, that will certainly come with that. But congratulations, we'll give everybody a second here to go.
Does that include us?
You sound like, make the school board sound like it's really fun.
It is. Especially bonds. Bonds are fun.
Man, Rob, you can clear a room.
You can.
I have this impact on people, so it's a gift. All right, so moving on next into our agenda, we're going to recess this meeting in order to perform a public hearing on an additional appropriation and general obligation bond issuance. Can I have a motion to recess this meeting and call to order the 1028 hearing?
Yeah, I move. Yeah, I move to pause this meeting for a minute and move into our 1028 hearing.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting into the additional appropriation 1028 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Now I'll call to order the 1028 additional appropriation hearing and general obligation bond issuance meeting. So the purpose of this meeting tonight is to discuss the scope of a bond issue that we're seeking to undertake on behalf of the school corporation. The scope of the project that we're talking about are the high school roof systems that are in various shades of repair and disrepair. As we speak, there is a chiller replacement, and when I say chiller, it's HVAC. I don't know why we can't just say HVAC, but it's chiller. But for the middle school, and then in the high school, we have a Dectron unit replacement, which is an air filtration system that obviously with the levels of chlorine and things in the air there, it requires some specialty equipment to keep that safe for spectators and athletes and that kind of thing. So the scope of the project and the bond issuance are those three things that we're talking about. The funding proposal that we have here is not to exceed of a $4.45 million general obligation bond, or a GO bond. The maturity date would be no later than January 15th, 2036. So it'll be a 10-year payback on the bond. And the interest rate is stated as no higher than 5.5%. So at this point in the meeting, we're going to ask for comments from the community as it relates to the $4.45 million general obligation bond that we're considering. Do we have anybody? Okay. No comments from the community. So at this point, I think I would look for a motion to either approve, modify, or deny the additional appropriation that we had in our bond or in our board packet for this month.
I move to modify.
Okay.
I second that.
All right. I have a motion to move to modify and a second. All those in favor, could you signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Comments, questions, modifications?
Comment is it's not specific enough. Words like certain, miscellaneous. I mean, we have in our agenda.
Which
the
document are you
roof,
looking at?
The HVAC and the pool, and this mentions all kinds of other projects. I asked about that previously, and I haven't gotten a good answer why playgrounds and ball fields and that are mentioned in here. And I've been told that you explained it, I'm sure, but I still don't understand why it says 5 million when it's 4.451. And I've been told you can explain that to me better. But I just, it's too general and not specific enough. And the last go bond we had before us was the same. And I don't even know where to begin. It needs to be specific to what this money is for. And it needs to be specific to the amount of money, unless you can explain to me why it says 5 million, because I still don't understand that.
And if you could introduce yourself, Jeff, to the room.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Glaze. I'm Jeff Qualkenbush with Barnes and Thornburg, bond counsel for the school corporation. So the reason that we have the project description as broad as we do is that we're trying to make sure that you capture in here not only the 3 specific items, but in case there are other things that come about during that project, such as in the heating and air conditioning system. You may have the chiller, but then you may discover that the control system needs to be updated to fit the chiller. You may then have to discover that the ventilator system, excuse me, needs to also be updated. So we want to keep that extremely broad so that when you get your architect and your engineer in here and your bids in, then you can determine at that point what you want to do in connection with the project, not have the legal documents that actually, thank you. Sorry. Oh, you're good. That actually dictate what you do. So we'll be done. This is just a preliminary approval at this point for these projects. And you will then, as you go through the bid process with your engineers and architects, figure out exactly more what you want to do at that point. So we want to keep the project's description in the legal documents as broad as possible so that you let the project budget drive what your bids are, what your project is, not what your legal documents say they are. With respect to the 5 million, that's the appropriation amount. If you have a bond issue of 4.45 million, you may have interest earnings associated with that, and you want to make sure that you actually do have the ability to put that amount of interest earnings on the project. If you have an appropriation that is too low, then you have to come back and repeat the process again to be able to expend those extra dollars that you earn in the interest. Because we don't know what that interest earnings will be yet, that's because we don't know how quickly you will spend the money. We want to make sure that you have more than sufficient funds available in the appropriation. To the extent that the appropriation is not spent, that appropriation just goes away at the end of the project. So we want to give you flexibility in the legal documents, not have the legal documents cause you any sort of limitation or restrictions that would otherwise prevent you from spending that money for the legitimate purposes that are for the project.
Goes away. What do you mean goes away?
So an appropriation for capital projects, if you don't spend the full 5 million because you don't earn interest up to the 5 million, then once that project is completed, it just goes away from the books. It just is terminated. So unlike your annual appropriation budget for your general fund or your education fund and your operations fund, those have to be reappropriated every year. And at the end of the year, they expire if they're not spent. These appropriations for capital projects do not expire at the end of the end of the year. They continue through the end of the project.
So how can we be so general on, I'll just focus on the pool. When it's replace, repair, update, I thought we were going to totally redo the system in the pool. And part of the other question to that is, if we have a whole new, brand new system, not something that's been replaced or repaired, then can't we depreciate that asset?
So I would say that the update of the new Dectron system, that is a replacement of the existing Dectron system. So that would be kind of the replacement language there. So when it says repair, replace, and or update, any of those 3 that are necessary for that. The engineer and the contractor may get in there and they may say you don't have to completely replace that Dectron system. You may only have to update a portion of it, or you may only have to repair a portion of it. So the construction professionals will come back to you and give you a report, and then you as a school board will determine whether to repair, replace, or update that system based on their further investigation as you get through the project.
So is it still considered an asset?
Oh, yes.
Does it still depreciate if it's not brand new?
Oh, yes.
It's a project, but you're saying it could be,
It is an asset that would depreciate if you took depreciation, but as a school corporation, you don't take depreciation.
none.
None, because you don't have any income taxes that you have to pay, so therefore you don't have to claim any depreciation on your income tax returns.
Okay.
You're a governmental entity, so you don't, well, all this stuff is assets, because it has to be depreciable assets to be able to be financed on a taxable basis.
Right.
The consideration of whether it is something that you depreciate at a certain value is not material to you, because you are not having to pay income taxes as a governmental entity. Whereas if you're a corporation, a for-profit corporation, then you would be very concerned about what that asset would be valued at for depreciation purposes.
Okay, that helps.
So you're saying we can earn interest on the borrowed money that's sitting there not spent yet as these,
You are required to earn interest on the money that is sitting there that you have not yet spent, yes, by both state and federal law.
So
what kind of, go ahead.
why don't we ask for smaller appropriations, because you can't sell the bond as well?
If
I mean,
you,
if we only ask for $1 million to fix the pool,
So you want to appropriate at least all the principal amount of bond that you're authorizing. So in this case, you would want to have an appropriation of at least $4,450,000, because if you, this is the only time as a board you would be approving that expenditure. You would then, as the bids come in, then approve claims to pay for those invoices as they come in. And after you receive the bids, approving the contract for the award of those projects. But before you can issue the bonds, you have to have an amount authorized to spend equal to what you expect to have both in the bond proceeds you receive and the interest that you're going to earn under federal tax law. And so we always want to make that appropriation higher than what you anticipate you're going to have, because you don't want to have to keep track on the appropriation side of a dollar amount, because if you exceed that appropriation, then that violates that expenditure rule under federal and state law, and you would then have to remit the money back after you paid the contractor for it. You'd have to pull that money back before and have an additional appropriation before you could legitimately spend that money to pay that in. So we always want to make sure, as your lawyers, that you don't accidentally exceed the appropriation and set up a process that would allow you to do that.
so if we choose to do the roof first, and we have all these other projects that are to be assessed within this dollar amount, and we find out the roof costs $4 million, then pool doesn't get done, nothing else gets done.
That would be your decision to make. Yes, you'd have to make an allocate decision of whether you need to do all the roof as recommended, or whether you need to scale that back in order to do something that may be a higher priority need at the pool or at the middle school gymnasium. In addition, the financing is set up in a way, if I remember correctly, to allow you, should you run into that situation, to be able to fund those projects with a later bond issue in a couple more years based on, and stay at your tax rate of less than 99 cents in debt service fund. But yes, you would have to, as bids come in, if they come in over what you estimate for the budget for that, then you would have to make a decision of whether to accept that bid, have it rebid, or not do that project and proceed with something else that may give a higher priority first.
So it's not standard to do a bond per project.
It is not standard to do a bond per project when you can do a larger bond, because the larger the bond, the more efficient it is, and you don't have to continue to do multiple bond issues, because you have certain fixed costs for each bond issue. I get paid a fixed cost, the financial advisor gets paid a fixed cost, the rating agency gets paid a cost, and so if you do three $2 million bond issues, you're going to pay for those costs 3 times. If you do one $6 million bond issue, you pay for those same fixed costs only 1 time, so you get more money for your project.
So is what we're approving to move forward, but we're not saying we're for sure borrowing the money?
That is correct. You're not going forward with the full bond issue process. You now will go into the engineering process if you approve this, but we know you have the authorization to do that. Then at this point, the superintendent and administration would then hire the construction professionals to assess the roofing system, assess the heating and air conditioning systems, and then come back to you with bids for those projects based on the market. If you then approve those bids, then this fall is when we would sell the bonds for up to $4,450,000. If the bids came in less than that, then we would downsize the size of the bond issue to cover just those projects you've approved contracts for.
And then there'll be a document that replaces this document that could be more specific.
No, the specificity of the document would be the approval of the contracts for each of those projects. So
Say
if
that
we
in
approve
English.
a roofing project for 2.5 million, a heating and air conditioning chiller project for 500 or 600,000, and a Dectron system for 1.5 million. That would then be the authorization for the superintendent to direct us to sell the bonds for that amount.
And there'll be nothing in that document about playgrounds and ball fields and all this miscellaneous stuff.
No, but if you decide you want to do also playgrounds at a later point in the year, and there's money available because you haven't used all 4.45 million, then you as a school board would make that decision at that point in time.
So how long can that money sit that we haven't used and draw interest?
So our plan, first of all, is you would not sell the bonds until after you get the bids for those first three main projects later this summer. And so we are not planning to sell the bonds until this September, October of this year. Unless we start to see, for example, that interest rates start to rise dramatically because of certain issues happening on both the federal and state level. And if that's the case, then we may come back and recommend that you sell some bonds or all the bonds to avoid higher interest rate costs associated with that. But it is my understanding that if you approve this tonight, that then the roofing engineer and the heating and air conditioning engineers will now be commissioned to do their design work and go out for bid, which they're anticipated to get completed by May or June. And then at that point, we'd be told what the bond issue size would be. And if you then decided, based on those project costs, to do something else that's on this list, that's also a need, you would then have that bid out and give a direction with that. Once we issue the bonds, you have up to 3 years to spend that money under federal law. You have to spend 5% within the first 6 months, but then you have 3 years to spend the remaining under 5%.
And we have no remaining money in any of the other existing bonds that we have?
There is some remaining money in the elementary, that we reserve for a playground. So around $140,000.
It's how much?
Around 140,000,
Isn't the playground like 300,000?
pretty much, yeah.
So-
But that's what that's, the process we've gone through to work on some grants, to get some support.
And I'm gonna ask this without trying to offend you or anyone. When you say we set that money aside for the playground, I don't remember that conversation. Was that something we discussed?
Well, I mean, I guess we didn't necessarily discuss it, but we did have a $500,000 appropriation for playground. That was in the initial elementary package. We had to reduce that down because of different,
When the
costs.
elementary projects were done, there was
Right.
playground, okay.
Yeah.
Because we had the playground presentation, but you're talking about way before that.
That was way. that was
Okay, that's
about
That's pre-us.
pre-us,
22.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
pre-us.
Sorry,
No,
yeah, I'm like, I must have
It's
slept through that.
It's an excellent question. I mean, it's not a wrong question. So,
Okay, I just,
that's all good.
So that 140,000 could be, does it have to be used on the playground?
It would have to be used in the elementary, because that's specifically what it is for.
That bond issue it could be used for any improvements at the elementary school. So to the extent that you have it identified as being for the playground, and then if you decide to use any other funds of the school corporation to subsidize that aren't grant funds, then you would have to be very careful about going over the amount that was authorized for that elementary school project a couple of years ago. So that's where, in that situation, you may say, okay, we have $140,000 available. We can't do the playground, but we can maybe do a portion of the playground. We can do maybe some of the equipment, or we can do the surface area to make sure it's a softer surface area, and do just part of it now, and then come back later and do it once that project's completed. Do something else at that elementary school playground. But it does have to be used at the elementary school.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff? We're good. So we do not have any modifications, to it. We just had the questions per se.
I don't like it.
I don't remember that being the question.
Well, I mean, I don't like how it's worded. I don't understand, like I've said a couple
Yeah.
times tonight, schools do things differently. I don't like the vagueness of it. I get his answer and explanation, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how it's done. I would like it to be more specific. And this is gonna be really unpopular, but I'm really upset that we have to do this and borrow this money when we have a roof that's leaking over a brand new gym floor. I still contend we did this completely backwards, and that really, as a taxpayer, as an elected official that oversees this position for my neighbors and my citizens, it's the most upsetting thing I've seen in the 2 years I've been here. That we have a brand new gym, a brand new Hall of Fame, brand new, and the roof needs replaced. I still haven't had a good explanation as to why we did it that way. And it just really, really upsets me as a taxpayer that we did that. So, we borrowed this money with my objection that we really did things backwards.
All right. The record will reflect your objection to that. I appreciate your comments. But I do need a motion to approve, the additional appropriation so we can move forward with the bid process and find out what, how big the dog in the fight is. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the additional appropriation.
I move to approve the additional appropriation for the general obligation bond issuance.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Cochran, one other point of clarification. I think you should also approve the bond resolution, because it's separate resolutions, there's two resolutions there, so you approve the appropriation resolution. But the other resolution is in the board packet, was the bond resolution, and you should have a motion and a second to approve that. as well.
Okay. No, that's fine, that's fine. So, okay, so I have that motion carries, my motion carries. Also need, thank you, Jeff, for that. A motion to approve the bond appropriation that is present in our package, is that correct?
Bond resolution.
Bond resolution.
I move to approve the bond resolution.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the bond resolution. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn the 1028 additional appropriation hearing?
I move to adjourn the 1028 resolution hearing.
Thank you. And we'll call back to order our regular school board meeting at this time. We move on to the consent agenda. We have the approval of, thank you guys very much for coming, appreciate it. So the approval of the agenda, the approval of the minutes, the work session minutes from January 13th, the regular session minutes from January 13th, the Board of Finance minutes from January 13th, and the executive session minutes from January 21st. We have the approval of claims, payroll claims, January 17th and January 31st. We have accounts payable claims for February of 2025. We have the approval of the personnel report, which I will read at the conclusion of this. Approval of field trips for the Tipton High School Band, Niagara Falls and Cleveland for June 8th through 11th, 2026. And then the approval to accept the donations that were in your January donations report. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. So the personnel report, I was so glad to see this one was small and had names that I could pronounce. So this is exciting. Give me a second here to get that back. There we go. So certified staff for the personnel report. We have a medical leave request from Alexis Perry Lepper. requesting a medical leave of absence from the elementary school February 25th through March 9th of 2025. For classified staff, we have recommendations for Cheryl Emmert, Thomasita Boyer, and Michael Cargill. Cheryl's a special education paraeducator. Thomasita is a cafeteria employee, and Michael a second shift custodian for the elementary school. We have resignations of Michael Cargill from second shift custodian of Tipton Elementary School, and Elizabeth Grossa, third shift custodian from the high school. And we had no ECA staff in the personnel report. Moving on from there, we have the rest of Dr. Glaze's superintendent report. Here, you want this one?
Okay, it's always fun to get checks. And so, Bob, would you like to come up and chat about this big check that you're going to give?
Yes.
I appreciate.
I've had it before, I like to talk, you know that?
I've never heard that.
No.
Start the timer, Jim.
I got you, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
3 minutes.
I just want to say what a privilege and honor it is for me to be here. In a whole different role than what I've had. It's kind of fun to look out here and see these people. Yep, I hired them when I was here, and some people on the board were friends with my daughter when they were in high school. And anyway, just a wonderful time to be here. And I want to share a couple things. I read a lot. I say I want to write a book someday with philosophy stuff, but Warren Buffett, who's pretty good on investing and made a lot of money, talks about if you want to be a good leader and a smart person, surround yourself with smarter people who know more about it. And I appreciate a community that elects people to challenge things on a board and ask good questions. That what you got elected to do. So I appreciate that. And Baker and Tilly is one of the top financial advice organizations in the state of Indiana, and have been many years, and Belvia Gray, who made the presentation, is highly respected. And Jeff Quackenbush, maybe the most respected bond counsel in the state of Indiana. He gets kind of technical sometimes, but he's just a wonderful, not only a wonderful, smart lawyer, but he's also a good person and a good friend. And now I have well, I'd say my family too. We love living here. My wife, this is her 10th year of doing my closet here. So I've been going to do something at a board meeting later, and you guys have all been so greatly supportive of that. I appreciate that. My kids loved being here. My son ended up not graduating here because I was foolish enough to move away while I had another job, but we came back because what a wonderful community this is. So then the other thing that Warren Buffett says, or another thing, is that your best investment is an investment in yourself and the people around you. Every day is an opportunity to do good for people, and that's what you do as a board. That's what the superintendent does. And I've been so blessed after I retired to get to work with Performance Services. It's an outstanding company. It's design build type construction, a little different, but it's the fastest growing type of construction in the United States. This company's 25 years old, started with one project 25 years ago, and now is in 15 states and expanding to 2 more. And the guy that leads that company, Tim Thoman, completely gives back all the stuff that he can to communities. I could take you to Haiti. We didn't get to go to Cancun, but we go to Haiti. I can show you a village of 300 homes that he built after a hurricane went through. And the guy from Republic Airways supplied all the transportation. He supplied all the materials and the engineers and the architects to design all this stuff. So all these people who lived in grass kind of huts with dirt floors now have cement floors. They put in solar panels. They put in all kinds of stuff for the entire community. Replaced all the boats they lost. He's just always doing those kind of things, and I appreciate that. And I'm so blessed. They built the jail here in Tipton County. Actually, the jail project was going way over budget, and they're having issues. So they said we need to get another company. So Performance Services came in and kind of saved the counties with that. Anyway, so again, that's enough for that stuff. I do appreciate being here, and at the superintendent's conference in December, Performance Services, always holds a reception, at the end of a banquet that they have where they honor all the people in the state who are getting different kinds of honors. They just have a reception. And so for the last couple of years have drawn out 5 schools of superintendents who have come to the reception, put their name in to give $1,000 scholarships back to the school corporation. And so Dr. Glaze was honored with being selected as one of those random people. And this check is made out to the Tipton County Foundation. So we'll go to them, and I understand he's already working on a scholarship with them, how to award that to deserving high school person or persons. But anyway, so this $1,000, I'm very blessed and honored to give you this from Performance Services for the Scholarship Fund of Tipton Community Schools.
Thanks, Bob.
Do this?
Sorry, I'm getting all different angles over here. I'm going crazy. Okay. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'm gonna do it for a student going into education.
Oh, now that my son's gone, thanks.
Evening, folks. I don't come here tonight as sheriff. I come here tonight as the treasurer of the Knights of Columbus at 1265 at Tipton. The gentleman who stands next to me is Joe Stahl. He is the Grand Knight of 1265 of the Knights of Columbus. Joint venture this past fall with our partners in Cicero at a football game between Ice and Heights. We did our annual cookout, free will donation, whatever else. We ended up collecting roughly $1,000. We rounded it up, we split it in half, and Heights gave their money to an organization in their school. We're giving our money to you guys to go toward paying off student debt in their lunch. So any student who has a negative debt in their lunch accounts, this check for $500 is going to go toward, hopefully go toward paying off that debt, so that way they can have a good meals again. So, but no problem. And this, we will continue doing our fundraisers like this for the football game every year. So who knows from there? So, all right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is Mr. Hackman, and he's going to talk a little bit about our community survey data. And you probably want me to go ahead and get
Yeah.
that, Bill?
I created a video to show in an effort to be transparent with sharing with you and making sure that the information is universally shared with other people. So this is a video I created to share and to someone here's kind of the same thing. So it's 50 minutes long, and you let me. I don't have any money to give or checks to give right now. I'm leaving you a 50-minute video, but I'll let you guys watch it, and I think I'll answer some. Tell a lot about the survey, and then afterwards, if you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Did you say 50 minutes?
15.
Okay.
15.
I heard 50.
Actually, 150.
I knew air copy, so you may have to find it.
Right, sorry.
I heard 50.
I did too, twice. No.
Okay, awesome. Technology is so fun thing for me. Okay, all right, here we go.
Hello, my name is Dr. Hackman. Thank you for the opportunity to present the findings from our recent TCSE community survey. This survey gathered valuable feedback from students, staff, and parents to evaluate our school-family community partnerships. Over the next 15 minutes, I will highlight key insights, alignments with our strategic plan, areas for growth, and our next steps moving forward. The primary goal of the survey was to evaluate how well we are engaging with our students, staff, and families. To do this, we used Joyce Epstein's 6 dimensions of engagement, a nationally recognized framework for effective school-community relationships. 1, parenting. How we support families in creating a home environment conducive to learning. 2, communicate. The effectiveness of school-to-home interaction. 3, volunteering. Opportunities for parents to be involved in school activities. 4, learning at home. Resources provided for parents to support student learning. 5, decision-making. How parents and students are involved in shaping school policy. 6, community collaboration. Partnerships with external organizations to enhance student opportunities. Understanding stakeholder perceptions in the 6 areas allows us to celebrate successes and identify areas for growth. To ensure a comprehensive understanding of stakeholder perceptions, we conducted a mixed method survey, combining both quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative data used Likert scale questions to measure satisfaction, engagement, and trends across key areas. Qualitative data, open-ended responses allow parents, staff, and students to share personal experiences and suggestions. We surveyed 3 key groups to get a well-rounded perspective. 480 students provided insight into their school experience, communication effectiveness, and extracurricular involvement. 65 staff members shared perspectives on parent engagement, student needs, and instructional support. 155 parents gave feedback on communication, decision-making involvement, and support for learning at home. We surveyed these 3 groups because they each interact with the school in different ways. Students experience learning and engagement firsthand. Staff implement school initiatives, and parents play a crucial role in supporting education at home. By gathering input from all 3 perspectives, we get a clearer, more accurate picture of what's working and where we can improve. Before we dive into the survey results, it's important to understand how the scores were calculated and what they represent. Survey responses were collected using a Likert scale ranging from 1 to 5. 1 means strongly disagree, while 5 means strongly agree. Each score represents an average rating from students, parents, and staff across different survey categories. Scores of 4.0 or higher indicate strong satisfaction and effectiveness in that area. Scores below 3.5 signal areas needing improvement, where additional support or adjustments may be necessary. Since we gathered feedback from 3 stakeholder groups, analyzing the data this way ensures that no single perspective outweighs the others, providing a balanced, data-driven understanding of our strengths and areas for growth. Now let's take a look at what the results tell us. Now that we've covered the purpose and structure of the survey, let's take a look at what's working well across our schools. The survey identified 3 major strengths: communication, community collaboration, and our dedicated teacher staff. First, let's talk about communication. This was one of the highest rated categories across all stakeholder groups. Parents and staff consistently praised the clear and consistent flow of information, particularly through newsletters, emails, and social media updates. Students also reported that communication has improved when it comes to schedules, assignments, and school events. This tells us that our efforts to keep families informed are effective, and we should continue refining these strategies to maintain strong engagement. Next, community collaboration stood out as another strength. Our partnerships with local organizations provide valuable extracurricular and academic opportunities that students appreciate. Programs in athletics, fine arts, and career development were specifically highlighted as areas where students feel supported and engaged. This aligns directly with our strategic plan's focus on ensuring students have access to meaningful real-world experiences that prepare them for success beyond the classroom. Finally, one of the biggest takeaways from the survey was the overwhelming appreciation for our teachers and staff. Parents and students repeatedly recognize educators for their commitment, support, and approachability. Staff members are seen as deeply invested in student success, and their ability to build strong relationships with families and students was frequently mentioned. This reinforces what we already know. Our educators are a key driver of student achievement, and their impact is widely recognized and valued by our community. Key takeaway. These findings confirm that we are doing many things right, particularly in how we communicate, how we collaborate with the community, and how we support our students. While we'll soon discuss areas where we can grow, it's important to take a moment to celebrate these successes. Our foundation is strong, and that's something we should all be proud of. Now that we've reviewed our strengths, let's turn our attention to the areas that need improvement. The survey identified 3 key areas for growth: learning at home, decision-making, and volunteering. Learning at home was the lowest rated category. Many parents feel under-supported in helping their children academically. They express frustration over a lack of resources, unclear expectations, and limited guidance on how to effectively reinforce learning at home. The second lowest rated category was decision-making. This tells us that both parents and students feel disconnected from governance and policy decisions. Volunteering also presented challenges. While many parents want to be involved, they struggle with rigid volunteer schedules that don't always accommodate work and family commitments. Many of our requested more flexible volunteering opportunities, such as virtual options, short-term commitments, and alternative ways to contribute beyond traditional classroom systems. Now that we've discussed the quantitative survey results, let's take a closer look at the qualitative feedback, the open-ended responses that help us understand the why behind the numbers. Several key themes emerged from stakeholders' comments. First, support for high ability. Special education students was a common concern. Many parents expressed the need for better differentiation for advanced learners and more consistent support for special education students. Some felt that high ability students needed more academic challenges, while others pointed out inconsistencies in IEP accommodations and services for students who require additional support. Next, trust transparency emerged as another major theme. There were repeated concerns about inconsistent enforcement of school policies. Some parents and staff felt that disciplinary actions and recognition opportunities weren't always applied fairly. Parents also requested more visibility into school decision-making processes, asking for clearer communication about policies, curriculum changes, and student progress reporting. The third key theme was social development. Many parents and students cited bullying concerns, asking for stronger enforcement of anti-bullying policies. Students expressed a desire for more structured social emotional learning, SEL programs, and peer mentorship initiatives that support mental health and positive interactions among students. In addition to these key themes, trends emerged across different stakeholder groups. Staff expressed the need for clearer communication with parents, especially regarding student expectations and academic progress. Parents requested more structured ways to be involved in decision-making, beyond just attending meetings. Students expressed a strong desire for more extracurricular opportunities and career-focused learning experiences, including additional clubs, internship programs, and specialized academic tracks. One of the most encouraging takeaways from the survey is that many of the findings align with our existing TCSD strategic plan. This means that the priorities we've already set are addressing the key concerns that stakeholders have shared. First, our communication goals remain the same. We are already prioritizing frequent newsletters, advisory committees, celebrating student and staff achievements. These efforts have contributed to strong ratings and communication across all groups. Next, our professional learning goals are aligned with stakeholder expectations. Parents, staff, and students have expressed appreciation for the commitment and support of our educators. Continued focus on high-quality teacher development ensures that our staff remains well-trained, engaged, and prepared to support student success. Finally, our student achievement goals focus on attendance incentive and targeted academic interventions. These measures help students stay engaged, build strong learning habits, and receive the necessary support to succeed. The fact that these survey findings align with our strategic plan tells us that we are on the right track. We now have a data-driven path forward, allowing us to build upon our successes and refine areas for improvement to make even greater strides. While we are on the right track, the survey results also highlight specific areas where we can improve. Based on this data, here are some strategies we might consider to address our key growth areas. First, we should expand learning at home resources. Many parents feel unsupported in helping their children with academics. We can address this by developing parent workshops, creating digital and print guides, and providing structured academic support tools that help families reinforce learning outside of the classroom. Next, we should increase decision-making opportunities. Families and students express interest in having more input in school policies and governance. Establishing formal advisory boards, hosting town halls, and increasing transparency in decision-making processes can help address this concern. Another area to explore is volunteer flexibility. Many parents want to be involved but struggle with rigid schedules. Introducing virtual, short-term, and more flexible volunteering options will create more opportunities for engagement and ensure that families can contribute in ways that work for them. Finally, we should focus on strengthening SEL and equity efforts. There were concerns about bullying prevention, mental health resources, and fair funding across extracurriculars. Expanding social emotional learning programs and ensuring equitable funding for all student activities will reinforce our commitment to a supportive, inclusive school environment. By focusing on these key strategies, we can enhance the areas that need improvement while continuing to build on the strong foundation we already have. work to refine our approach and ensure that our next steps are informed by stakeholder feedback. The spring survey will help us dive deeper into the areas that need improvement by focusing on the following key questions. First, what specific resources do parents need for at-home learning? We know that parents want more support in helping their children with academics, but we need to understand what type of support is most helpful. Next, how do families and students want to be involved in decision making? Our goal is to provide structured and meaningful opportunities for engagement, and this survey will help us determine the best way to do that. Another focus area is access to opportunities. We will ask whether we are effectively meeting the needs of underrepresented student groups, including those involved in fine arts, career programs, and extracurricular activities. Finally, we will evaluate how effective our anti-bullying and SEL programs are. Stakeholders have expressed concerns about social development, and this survey will help us determine whether our current initiatives are meeting students' needs or if adjustments are necessary. This follow-up survey will provide deeper insights, ensuring that our next steps are strategic, impactful, and directly aligned with the needs of our school community. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the biggest successes that came out of this survey. First, our communication strategies are strong and effective. Parents, students, and staff all recognized and appreciated the way we communicate important school information. This tells us that our commitment to clear, frequent, and transparent communication is making a difference. Next, our teachers and staff are highly valued. Stakeholders consistently mention how dedicated, supportive, and engaged our educators are. This is a testament to the hard work and commitment of our school staff, and it is one of our greatest strengths as a district. Another major success is our community partnerships. Many students value the opportunities provided through local partnerships, extracurricular activities, and career development programs. This reinforces that our efforts to connect students with meaningful real-world experiences are paying off. Finally, we have a strong foundation for future growth. While there are always areas to improve, this survey confirms that we have the right priorities in place and that we are moving in the right direction. While we will continue working to strengthen engagement and support, it's important to celebrate these wins as a school community. Our strengths give us momentum to build on as we make future improvements. Our communication, staff engagement, and community collaboration are strong. These strengths serve as a foundation for continued success. We have clear areas for growth. Learning at home, decision-making transparency, and volunteering flexibility all need attention and improvement. The spring survey will refine our focus. We will ask targeted questions that will help us develop strategic action plans to address our most critical areas of need. I want to thank everyone who participated in the survey and contributed valuable insights. Your feedback helps shape our path forward and ensures that we continue improving as a district and as a community. Thank you for your time and commitment to improving our schools. I welcome any questions, comments, or feedback as we move forward together.
Thank you for your patience for that, and I will take any questions if you guys have them, or I gave you guys a packet that is a lot to go over, and if you guys want time to digest that and to look at it and go through it, I would gladly return. You can reach out to me, but from just that kind of initial video, does anyone have any questions for me?
Do you have in the packet, how many surveys were sent out and how many were returned and?
Yeah, I have how many were returned. It's 400, I believe, 400 and some for students, 155.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
But I mean, how many were totally sent out? Did you
There would have
send out
been-
1,000 to parents?
There would have been 1,400 sent out each week to parents in emails. And then we would have, the students would have been, we had, what, 3 through 5? I mean, 3 through 12?
It was 4 through 12, I believe.
4 through 12, so roughly around 600 with them. Students that would go out weekly. And then staff, we have around 200. So that would be whatever that would go out. We sent it out 3 times, I think. So, yeah.
Cliff, did you learn anything that you weren't expecting? What was like the one thing that really, in the feedback that we got, that maybe was aha for you?
So it built off, I did my dissertation at the elementary school, and it kind of aligns with that. And building off of that, the one thing is each time you keep adding and zeroing in. Adding the students, I mean, the students rate is higher on each category more than parents and staff. And so that's a great sign. We felt good about that. That was a little bit surprising. But as far as the learning at home and the volunteering, decision-making, that aligns with what I found in my dissertation. And I think that aligns with what people are seeing just kind of all around the state. Learning at home is becoming more difficult for parents. And so that's an area to look at. But all three of those things really aligned with that. But seeing the students high, and other than that, that was the biggest takeaway myself.
Thank you.
Do you think that's because of technology, like the parents not being able to help at home? What?
I think it's time constraint, and also I think that, there was a period after COVID where kind of or during COVID, they took over for a little bit, parents did, and tried, and after that, I think there was a shift in mindset that it kind of became that teachers teach and we parent. And so I think that that's kind of been a shift in mindset, and it's been probably not as hands-on at home, but I don't think it's technology, I think it's just a shift in mindset after COVID.
The opportunity to volunteer, I got on the website real quick and I didn't see anything on the website, and I just looked really quick for opportunities to volunteer.
Typically, they're sent out at the building level, and then we will typically send out emails to all parents, like to volunteer to be part of a curriculum selection, or be part of anything like of that matter. We would send that out through email. We don't have a dedicated volunteer section on the webpage. That's a good catch. So that is something we should do.
I mean, because I don't know what might be available.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, I don't get those emails since I'm not a parent, but
That's a good catch, though. I mean, we don't have anything like that on our webpage, so that's a good catch. Thank you.
All right. The one last thing is I'll add that surprised me was the students were stating the need for SEL programs and the need for kind of that mental health support, which I thought was interesting. I think that that's a big component in how students are maturing and noticing that the things they need for mental health as students. So, all right. Well, thank you, and reach out if you have any questions. I gave you a lot to look over, and thank you.
Just want to say the video is a nice touch too. Really like it.
I did want to back up here. We did miss comments from the community. Did we have anybody signed up? I thought I asked about that, did we?
Yeah, you asked me, and no, we don't.
We don't have anybody signed up for this evening? Okay. What was that?
No, there was nothing signed up.
There was no one signed up for 6:30. Okay. Okay, from, in your packet were the departmental reports, the one from Mr. Jaworski, one from Adam on the food service, and one from Stephen, Director of Technologies. Are there any questions or comments on the departmental reports from anybody? Okay. All right, then
Don't you want to go try the waffle?
I do want to try a couple of things that Adam had in the newsletter, but
Just gotta know what the
I saw some tacos.
So that leaves us with Brooke. Welcome back, and
Thank you.
Look forward to the financial report.
All righty. For our 2025 budget appropriations, I went ahead and set out what the Education Operations and Debt Service Fund appropriations were for 2025. The Education and Operations Fund did have some purchase orders roll over. That does get added to the appropriation for 2025. So if you're looking at your appropriation reports, and see that it doesn't line up with the 1782 notice. It's just the purchase orders that rolled over. January was a 3-pay month for us, and we ended the month in education with $950,349.28, and debt service $791,655.05, and the operations fund $990,535.76, and in rainy day $2,003,833.41. January interest came in at $22,950.61. Also, our audit seems to be going well. They've expected maybe to be done in the next 2 weeks, at least on site. They've added a 4th auditor. I think they're on a deadline. So I appreciate the help that Dawn has given me and Emma and payroll, the building secretaries, when it comes to supplying documentation they're asking for. It's definitely a time commitment. So thank you.
Questions for Brooke? All right, moving on to old business. We do not have any old business on the agenda. From a new business perspective, in your packet, we do have the consideration to approve the advertisement for fertilizer and spraying bids. So permission to advertise for fertilizer and weed spraying is needed before we can accept bids. Bid specifications are in the board packet. This is a 2-year agreement. It's completed early in the 2025 growing season. Approval of the successful bidder will be announced in the March meeting. It's recommended that the board give permission to advertise for fertilization and weed spraying for 2025 and 2026 growing seasons. We'd look for a motion to approve the advertisement of the fertilizer and spraying bids.
Can I ask a question?
You, okay?
Do we need to move on it first? Make a motion first? I make a motion to approve the advertisement of fertilizer and spraying bids.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. We have a question before from Tammy.
Is it, do you have the standard set up for the people have to be licensed to spray?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's, that they have to provide the licensure?
Yes.
And it all comes back in the bid package.
It does?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm. All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, have a motion and a second. Questions are answered. All those in favor of granting permission to advertise for fertilization and weed spraying, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is the approval of I guess a 1003 or a 1003 flexibility waiver, depending on which side of the tracks you were born on. The approval of this resolution is necessary in order to submit our 1003 waiver to IDOE to allow us to use 3 days for professional development in the 25 and 26 school year. Looking for a motion to approve this resolution for the 1003 flexibility waiver.
I move to approve the, I'll say 1003 flexibility waiver.
Thank you.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes, you may.
Sorry. Do those have to be 3 full days, or can they be used as half days instead?
Gosh, that's a darn good question, and I wish Mr. Jaworski was here to answer. I think they can be used in full or half days. but
Okay.
I don't want to say that. You're right.
When we submit this, do we have to submit it as 3 full days or half days? So it's just,
Basically what it does, the resolution allows us to count minutes versus hours, which gives us the flexibility. And so you're just granting us permission to change the way it's
Okay.
calculated. So as far as the days and how those days are structured, that's something that is a local decision.
and then we've been doing these for the last few years. So how do we measure the success, or I guess, of how they're being used? Are we doing that?
Yeah, I mean, every time that we have one, we do a survey. That survey information is shared out with teachers, and we have a really high participation rate in surveys. Teachers tell us what they liked about things and what they didn't like about things. And so we'd be glad to share that with you. I mean, we have that for 3 years, so I'm sure that Scott will share that with you. Good stuff.
Thanks, Beth. Any other questions? All right, I do have a motion and a second to approve the 1003 flexibility waiver. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is approved. According to Indiana Code 5-11-10.5-2, all warrants or checks outstanding and unpaid for a period of 2 or more years as of December 31st of each year shall be declared void. There's a list of checks in your board packet that'll be canceled upon approval. I need a motion and a second for the cancellation of the stale checks that are located in your board packet.
I move to cancel, approve the cancellation of stale checks.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to cancel stale checks. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any questions? All right, motion carries. Discussion of meeting with Envoy companies and the pursuit of a leasing agreement. So I had sent to the board kind of a timeline from early in the summer up till today on our involvement in trying to help with the situation with the baseball fields in the city of Tipton. We are now at a place where the city has hired a landscape architect. They're expecting some conceptual designs to come in by the end of Q1. We are at a place where we are going to have our property surveyed, carve out that 36 acres as part of a lease agreement, carve out our competition baseball fields for inclusion in that lease. And so I didn't want to get too far down a path before bringing the board and the public up to speed. There will be, some legal fees involved in this and some surveying fees. We plan to meet on next Thursday with the mayor to discuss this and the city attorney. It will be my intention to ask for our legal fees and survey fees to be covered as a part of this so that they're, ultimately this operating agreement needs to be net new operating costs to the school, right? And so, but I wanted to make sure that the board, beyond the emails that I'm sending, we've got an opportunity to discuss that. It's a matter of public record, our willingness to help with this problem, but also our need to make sure that it remains a net neutral cost to the school to do this. So happy for questions or comments. There's no resolution here. There was just some new business.
You answered my number one question.
What was your number? Can we just guess what it was? What are the costs, right?
Are they gonna pay for the survey?
So that's to be determined, but my intention is to ask.
They have
for-
$2 million, right? I read that somewhere.
Somewhere. I read that, yes. So, but again, I want to make sure that we're out in together on this because we're being asked to lease property to the school for a period of over 10 years while their bond is out. And we need to make sure that this does not add to our operations, to our maintenance people, to our electric bill if they're running lights, all weekend long. And we're just starting that conversation. So Dr. Glaze and I discussed and thought it was time to maybe make you aware of that. So as you see these drafts come in.
So they submit all the
Right.
drafts for us to see.
Right.
So as net neutral, as I understand it, so make sure we're on the same page. It's our land.
Yes.
We're gonna let them build their fields on it
Yes.
and maintain their fields and pay us if they use our electricity or if there's any cost to us. Like, we're not charging them like $1,000 a month year round. That's not what we mean by lease, right? It's not like leasing a house, but to your term, net new, like this isn't gonna cost us anything. And they're gonna get to use our land instead of having to go buy 30 acres of their own.
Yes. It
Which
makes
would
more
suck up their
sense
$2
for the
million in a
taxpayers
hurry.
to leverage the infrastructure we have.
Yeah, and have it
versus,
here at the school. I'm all
The
on
$2
board.
million they have is
Yeah.
a parking lot. I mean, we spend $2 million on a parking lot around here, right? So,
Yeah.
so what we're trying to do is leverage our infrastructure, but then we can't have our maintenance people. All this is gonna happen over the summer. In the evenings, we can't
Right.
extend our maintenance people. And just make sure that we have a mutual, beneficial, arrangement with the city.
And again, we just want to make sure we have that in advance, just like Rob.
Yeah,
Rob's been great, we want everything up front, so there's no surprises.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
It's a win-win, right? I mean,
It should be. It should be.
we're not trying to get anything. They're not, and it benefits them and, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, we want to have as many kids on the campus as long as we can here. But we also want to make sure with that comes liability, and with that comes light bills and things that we've seen the tangible effects of the inflation in our electricity. And we want to make sure that if we're going to run lights, that there's a meter that captures that, that's not ours, those types of things.
Yeah.
So,
And this is the acreage behind the current baseball field and the football field?
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
yes.
over, not by the solar panels.
It might, I mean, part of it is we just have to see what conceptually they're looking at as far as what kind of space is needed and everything.
Right.
And is it only baseball or is it baseball and soccer?
So right now, there's talk of a sports complex. I think there's funding for a baseball field or two. But there may be a phased approach to this where other things would come at a later time. I don't know. But we want to work out the operating agreement prior to all of that. They may only need 10 acres or, I don't know. But they've just now gotten, I think, the landscape architect hired, and they're starting to do conceptual things. The attorney's recommendation was to carve out that property and have it surveyed so that we could make that part of the lease agreement and it wasn't convoluted. And then if we're going to use our performance or our professional fields or our performance fields, that we have that as part of the lease, and that our high school kids and those programs have right of first refusal on things of that. So we don't get up over our skis and have baseball, Little League scheduled when we're trying to host high school baseball and that type of thing. So trying to work that out early before earth movers start coming in.
You also might want to look at the map of the cross-country course.
Yeah, never been on it.
It's going to be a problem.
So, we're just going to send them back.
I'm just telling you, it's gonna, so it doesn't sneak up on you. Somebody's gonna go, wait a minute, that's the starting line.
Yeah, well, like I said, all that stuff has to be worked out, but I also didn't want any of that. I didn't want a draft to end up in your inbox and people wonder what in the world is this all about. So, all right. Any other matters to come before the board? We didn't have any. Oh, wait, we did. We had the advisory committees. I think you've touched base on that already. Upcoming schedule of events, February 14th is a flex day. And February 17th is President's Day, flex day. So that's a four-day weekend for the students and the teachers. February 24th will be a professional learning experience committee. That's going to be on that date. March 9th, daylight savings time begins, unless somebody in the legislature decides they want to tackle that too. And then our next meeting will be March 11th in these chambers. So final thing is information only. It's in your board packet, but it is around the extracurricular balances at the end of semester for 21 and 25. Should I read all of this, or it's just, I don't want to assume everybody can't, but there are, by school, there is a schedule of balances included in your packet, and there's no action. These are just reports that are being filed that we have an obligation as a board of school trustees to file. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
May I ask a question?
You may.
You've referred to us as trustees before. It's my understanding we're not trustees. Didn't that discussion come up
It
earlier?
did come up. We had
I
that
think that came
conversation.
with-
I probably need to verify that with
I think that
Andrew.
came in our meeting.
Make sure that that's, yeah, I need to verify that with him.
Yeah, I'd like clarification because I didn't think we were trustees.
I'll find out.
That has like a legal term, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, I don't want to be a trustee.
But we all trust you. I will
So
find
somebody will
out
look
an
into it.
answer. I will find out an answer.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I moved to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We are adjourned.